Hello, this is Mr. Philip Campbell here, and I am doing this video answering some questions from a parent and a student that came up in my Homeschool Connections History Boot Camp, understanding the Second Vatican Council. And this email comes from Claire. Claire says, I have a question for the class understanding the Second Vatican Council. Is all of Lumen Gentium infallible? Does it being an apostolic constitution mean it's infallible? Or is only certain parts ex cathedra statements? Also, Gaudium et Spes is just a pastoral constitution, which means it is dealing with the modern world, right? Does this mean that for these times it's infallible? One more question. How do you know what statements are ex cathedra? Thank you very much. Well, Claire, that's a lot of questions. You're asking some questions about some historical documents and also in general, what's ex cathedra? I'm just going to take them in order. Lumen Gentium is not infallible. Nobody claims that Lumen Gentium is infallible. Lumen Gentium restates several traditional teachings of the church, and in that sense, it's authoritative because insofar as it's restating the traditional doctrines of the church. But you seem to be asking about ex cathedra statements. There are no ex cathedra statements in Lumen Gentium. There are no ex cathedra statements in the entire Second Vatican Council. Does being an apostolic constitution mean it is infallible? No, but apostolic constitution means it's the highest authoritative document. So there are apostolic constitutions were the highest authoritative documents of the Second Vatican Council, and there were two of them, Lumen Gentium and, let's see, Constitution. Okay, there's two dogmatic constitutions, okay? Lumen Gentium and Dei Verbum. Those are the two highest authority documents. They're dogmatic constitutions. That means they concern the dogmas of the church, okay? So that means that those are concerning themselves with dogma. That's weighty stuff. But Lumen Gentium and Dei Verbum don't contain any ex cathedra statements. They are just restating the dogma of the Catholic Church. We might debate about whether they restate all of the dogma, how well they restate the dogma, but basically they're just meant to say this is the teaching of the church. So, Gaudium et Spes is a pastoral constitution, which means it's dealing with the modern world. Well, a dogmatic constitution is dealing with dogma. A pastoral constitution is dealing with pastoral issues. So Gaudium et Spes so the first two, Dei Verbum and Lumen Gentium, are saying, here's the dogma of the church. Gaudium et Spes is saying, practically speaking, here's how we should implement this dogma in the modern world. So Gaudium et Spes doesn't contain anything infallible. Again, no ex cathedra statements. Pastoral means that it's not teaching a dogma. It is giving recommendations on how the timeless dogma of the church should be implemented in the modern world. Okay? But it's definitely not infallible, and because it's pastoral, it's going to be of lesser weight than the other two. I'm not saying it's not authoritative, but it's not dogmatic. One more question. How do you know when a statement is ex cathedra? An ex cathedra statement comes from the Pope when, in his office as shepherd and teacher of all Christians, by virtue of his supreme authority, he is defining a doctrine concerning faith or morals to be held by the whole church. Typically, when a Pope speaks ex cathedra, he will say something like, I, by virtue of the successor of St. Peter, I define, declare, etc., for the whole church. And here's an example. Let me find it here. Define. The last ex cathedra declaration I know of in the church in a document came from John Paul II in the year 1994. In the document Ordinatio Sacerdotalis on the ordination of women. Now listen to how he speaks. This is in section 4 of the document. He says, he's about to say that the church cannot ordain women to the priesthood, and he says, therefore, in order that all doubt may be removed regarding a matter of great importance, a matter which pertains to the Church's divine constitution itself, in virtue of my ministry of confirming the brethren, I declare that the Church has no authority whatsoever to confer priestly ordination on women, and that this judgment is to be definitively held by all the Church's faithful. So see, he's saying right there he intends to clarify something. He says it pertains to the good of the whole Church. He invokes the ministry of St. Peter confirming the brethren from Luke 22, and then he says the words, I declare. And then he says what he's declaring, and then he says, and that this judgment is to be definitively held by all the Church's faithful. So he meets all the criteria for an ex cathedra statement right there. That was in 1994. That's the last time I'm aware that the Pope has made an ex cathedra statement. So ex cathedra applies to specific statements, not documents. It's specific statements that carry the mark of infallibility. You certainly can have those statements in a document, but it's not as easy as like, is this document infallible? Is this one not? Basically, we look at degrees of authority. A dogmatic constitution has a lot of authority, other ones less so. I hope that helps.